Tonight you are going to die. Not literally, but in about 6 to 8 hours, your brain is going to do something that looks, from the outside, exactly like death. Your body goes still. Your temperature drops. Your breathing slows to almost nothing. The people around you, if any are awake, can see no difference between you and a corpse. And then your brain switches on. Not dims, switches on. Your visual cortex fires as if you're actually seeing. Your amygdala runs hotter than it does right now while you're awake. Somewhere in your skull, something that looks like dying is actually one of the most complex processes your nervous system performs. And it has been doing this in exactly this way for at least 200,000 years. Here's what most people assume. Ancient humans must have been terrified of death. The unknown was everywhere. No hospitals, no doctors, no explanations. Someone went still. Someone stopped breathing, and they were just gone. That assumption was wrong. Very wrong. The evidence doesn't show a species running from death. It shows a species that sat down and tried to understand it. That built rituals around it. That made objects for it, that spent 500,000 years looking directly at the thing that scared them most and deciding it wasn't an ending. It was a door. In 1976, a team of archaeologists working in a cave called Shanidar in northern Iraq uncovered something that stopped the conversation cold. The grave of a Neanderthal man buried approximately 65,000 years ago. Around his body in the soil, they found clusters of pollen. Pollen from 8 different plant species: yarrow, groundsel, grape hyacinth. Plants that still bloom in that region today. Researcher Ralph Solecki and his team from Columbia University argued that the pollen wasn't accidental. The flowers had been placed deliberately. Someone had picked them, carried them, laid them across a body before covering it with earth. Think about what that means. Neanderthals, not modern humans, a species that diverged from our evolutionary line roughly 500,000 years ago. And they were putting flowers on their dead. To do that, you need more than grief. You need a concept. You need to believe that the person who was there is now somewhere else, and that the somewhere else matters enough to prepare for. The flowers weren't for the living mourners. Neanderthals left no evidence of ceremony for themselves. The flowers were for the dead, because whoever buried that man believed the dead could still receive things. There is a place in northern Spain called Atapuerca. Inside its cave system, in a chamber called Sima de los Huesos, the pit of bones, a team led by paleontologist Juan Luis Arsuaga found the skeletal remains of 33 individuals, not scattered, deliberately dropped down a 14-meter vertical shaft in near total darkness, carried there through tunnels too narrow to walk upright. Among the bones, one object, a single hand axe carved from red quartzite, bright red. Not a tool worn by use, made specifically for this, now called Excalibur, dating to 430,000 years ago. This is not a grave in any modern sense. This is a statement. These were Homo heidelbergensis, not Neanderthals, not us, an earlier species with smaller brains and no spoken language as we understand it. And they were performing deliberate, organized, costly ritual disposal of their dead. The red axe placed among the bones wasn't buried by accident. Red ochre was already being used across prehistoric sites as a marker of significance, of blood, of life. Someone chose the color, someone made the object, someone carried it into the dark and left it with the dead. They believed the dead were going somewhere, and they wanted them to have something for the journey. Here's what nobody talks about. In 2014, anthropologist Polly Wiessner at the University of Utah published a study in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. She had spent 30 years working with the Jew Hoansi people of the Kalahari Desert in southern Africa, a hunter-gatherer society whose basic way of life had remained broadly consistent for tens of thousands of years, and she tracked systematically what they talked about. During daylight hours, 6% of conversations were stories. Practical talk dominated food, water, disputes, movement. After dark, by firelight, 81% of conversations were storytelling, and inside that storytelling, a disproportionate share was spent on one specific topic, the dead, where they were now, what messages they had sent in dreams, whether a particular ancestor was watching, whether the person who died last winter was at peace. Fire extended the social day by 2 to 3 hours. Those hours became the hours for processing death, not avoiding it, not suppressing it, processing it, out loud, together. Ancient humans may have needed language for the dead before they needed it for almost anything else. Because here's what the dead did to ancient minds. They came back, every night. Your grandmother, gone 3 winters, stands at the edge of the river and looks at you. She has the right face, the right voice, the right way of standing. You reach out and she is gone, and you wake up. And you know with total certainty that you were just somewhere, that she is somewhere, because you just saw her. Matthew Walker, neuroscientist at the University of California, Berkeley, published research in 2017 showing that REM sleep doesn't just replay memories, it edits them. Specifically, it strips the emotional charge from painful experiences. The thing that was unbearable at midnight becomes manageable by morning. The brain during dreaming is actively processing grief, separating the fact of the loss from the pain of it. Ancient humans had the same REM architecture, the same cycles, the same chemistry. Every night their dead returned in full sensory detail, and every morning the pain was a little less. They didn't know the mechanism. They just knew the dead kept visiting, and that after the visits they felt better. Of course, they concluded the dead were alive somewhere. They had first-hand evidence. Every night. Think about this. Every major civilization that has ever existed on every continent, with no contact between them, developed the same belief. Two worlds. This one and another. The names are different, the rules are different, the rituals are completely different, but the structure is identical. A place where the dead continue, a way to reach them, a boundary that can sometimes be crossed. That is not coincidence, and it is not cultural borrowing. These people never met. They arrived at the same conclusion independently because they were running the same brain. And the same brain every night went somewhere that felt completely real and came back, and the dead were there, and the dead seemed fine. We now know what happens in the brain during a dream. We can map the neurotransmitters. We can trace which regions activate in what sequence. We can explain why you can't read text in dreams, why you can't check your phone, why the dead come back with the right face but the wrong words. We have the mechanism. We have solved the how. We cannot explain the experience. We cannot explain why it feels like being somewhere, why it convinces, why 30 seconds after you wake up, the feeling of being in that place is more vivid than what you ate for breakfast 3 days ago. The mechanism is solved. The experience is 430,000 years old and completely open. Tonight you are going to go still. Your temperature will drop. From the outside, you will look exactly like you are dying, and then your visual cortex will fire. Your amygdala will run hot, and you will go somewhere. Same as the person who laid flowers in the dirt at Shanidar in northern Iraq 65,000 years ago. Same as whoever carried that red axe through the dark tunnels in northern Spain and left it with 33 bodies at the bottom of a shaft. Same as the man or woman who sat by a fire in the Kalahari and said to the person next to them, "I saw her last night. She was standing by the river. She seemed at peace." You inherited all of it. The dream, the question, the thing your brain does in the dark that convinced every civilization in human history that death was not an ending. The only difference is that when you wake up, you'll check your phone. The memory will be gone in 30 seconds. They stayed with it by the fire, and they built everything out of it.